Hello, welcome back to History of Wine and the Vine. I'm Emily Kate. So this week we're going to be discussing the history of wine's preservatives. So as you know, wine needs preservatives because it will just go so off so quickly if it doesn't have them. So obviously we didn't always have all of the kind of technology and the different preservatives that we have today. So I thought it would be fun to take a look back and check out what our ancient friends were doing to preserve their wine. So kind of looking through Columella, Cato, and Pliny, our favorite ancient agronomists, we've come up with a lot of different techniques that were used. So first off, Columella. Columella definitely understood the need for these kinds of preservatives, and he had a really interesting one. He suggested that every 36 days that you should rub a pine cone on the kind of edge of the dolia or the amphora where your wine was. So kind of that sap, which is similar to like the resin. And so he wanted you to rub that every 36 days. And then as well, he suggested adding gypsum to the wine to kind of help preserve it. And then he had this crazy recipe. So we have it right here for you. It's actually from his On Agriculture, but I love this copy because it has these images of some of the different ingredients. So I'll read that to you now. Columella's recipe for a wine preservative. Crush an iris root, which should be as white as possible, and soak fenugreek in old wine. Then expose it to the sun or else put it in a dry oven. Then pound it up very small. Then into each vessel, which should contain 7 amphora, put an unicum and 8 scrupula of the preparation, and, if the must comes from marshy ground, 3 heminae of gypsum in each jar, or if it comes from a newly established vineyard, a sextarius, or if it comes from an old established and dry place, 1 hemina. So as you can see, this was very exact science back then, because there were so many different kind of stipulations based upon the vineyard that it came from and how big the amphora are and things like that. So clearly it was taken very seriously. Now Cato also took this very seriously, and he kind of wanted to address keeping everything clean and preserved during fermentation. So during fermentation, he describes that the stalks and the pips and the skins, they're all kind of boiling over and frothing out of the fermentation vat. And he's really interested in keeping this whole area clean and making sure that kind of nothing turns. So he discussed that twice a day, he wanted somebody to like brush and scrub the mouth or the lip of the dolia or of the fermenting vat. And then to apply a mixture of kind of boiled down must that had different herbs in it. So obviously these would probably be similar herbs to like the fenugreek that we were talking about earlier with Columella. So herbs that probably had qualities like antiseptic qualities, antibacterial qualities to keep things clean. And I don't know who else out here has worked at a winery, but that is probably one of your jobs, to scrub away at all the lips of everything and make sure everything's clean. So kind of nice to think they were doing that in ancient times as well. So definitely these idea of having these herbs and boiled things were very important, but as well they also used pitch, resin, and wax. So the wax is kind of lumped in with the pitch and resin when you think about the amphora. So they would be kind of sealing cracks in the amphora with the pitch and the resin and the wax. And then resin is actually, obviously you know of retsina, is actually soluble in alcohol. So it's thought that this was originally used to kind of clear the cracks and to make things a little bit smoother and less permeable in amphora, and then was actually kind of eased into the wine, and then people started using it as a preservative. So this is kind of like a divided camp kind of situation. So you pretty much have Pliny on one side that likes the taste of retsina, and then you have Columella that thinks that if wine is good wine, it should not have resin or pitch in it. So Pliny actually kind of treats it similar to the way that we treat oak, in that you know how sometimes you can tell this is American oak or this is French oak based on kind of different qualities. He was able to tell where the resin came from. If it came from highland areas, he liked that better. He thought that was nicer. Or if it came from lowland areas. So it was, like I said, clearly very exact science going on here. And another thing that was often done, as you can tell, so the Retsina would have been in any number of different forms, like a liquid form, a powdered form, or in clumps that they just threw in, or it was rubbed on the side, or sometimes there was like must that was boiled down and then added like a lot of resin to kind of make like a liquidy resin dropper situation. So these are a lot of different ways. Another really interesting thing that I've learned about is that people actually used to fumigate. So they didn't actually fumigate the wine, but they fumigated the container that the wine was in, kind of like we char barrels. They used to fumigate things. They used to burn things within kind of the dolia or the amphora before the wine would actually go in, right before, so that when the wine came in, it wasn't still in there and it didn't kind of have a negative reaction, but it still had all the qualities. So they used to have rosemary and laurel burning in these jars, and these had antibacterial and antifungal properties to them, and this was really attractive to the kind of winemakers of the time. Now also what they did was they burned kind of sulfur, so they had sulfur fumigating things, and this actually took a while because they knew, the Hellenic Greeks definitely knew of all of the qualities of sulfur and how it was kind of this antiseptic, and all these countries that are volcanic countries certainly have a lot of sulfur at their disposal. We actually have confirmation that, you know, Odysseus and Achilles would kind of ask for their homes to be fumigated with sulfur because it kept vermin out. And so kind of historians believe that maybe there were grapes or flowers or something in the house that was in there when it was fumigated and lasted a lot longer, and they said, oh my gosh, is this a preservative? And it started to be used in that way, and now, as you know, we're still using kind of sulfur, which is the whole debate about the sulfites, to preserve our wine today. So I hope that you enjoyed kind of learning about the history of wine's preservatives, and I will see you next week. Cheers!